The galaxy was not always a peaceful place. For countless centuries, different species had spread across star systems, building empires, trade networks, and alliances. Wars were common, though rarely as devastating as the one unfolding in the remote Caries sector. The planet Avoran, a lush world with vast oceans and dense forests, had once been a hub of culture and commerce. But now it lay under siege, its cities burning, its skies dark with the smoke of warships, and its people living in constant fear. The enemy was relentless, a marauder faction known across the sector for its brutal tactics and unstoppable fleets. They had no mercy, and no one had been able to stop them. In the middle of this chaos, the leaders of the Avorian coalition sent a desperate message to every corner of the galaxy. They had tried everything. They called on neighboring systems, hired mercenaries, even attempted diplomatic negotiations with the marauders. Nothing worked. And so, in the last hours of their hope, they sent a transmission to Earth, a planet far from the conflict but known in legends for producing warriors who could accomplish the impossible. On Earth, the message arrived at the United Nations Galactic Coordination Office, a massive building filled with officials, strategists, and analysts who managed Earth's interstellar relations. The room fell silent as the translation flickered across the main screen. "Attention Earth Council," the message began, spoken in the Coalition's formal language. "Our world faces annihilation. Our fleets are broken. We plead for your aid. Send soldiers, send enforcers. Only your kind can save us." The humans in the room looked at each other. Soldiers, yes, Earth had armies, but enforcers. That was a different level entirely. Enforcers were not just soldiers. They were humanity's finest, trained for situations no conventional force could handle. They were quick, creative, and fearless, capable of acting in ways that others could not predict. Across the galaxy, many species feared them, not because they were cruel, but because humans were unpredictable. Debates erupted immediately. Some council members argued that the risk was too high. Avorian was far away, and the Marauders' fleet was rumored to be massive. Sending enforcers meant committing some of Earth's most valuable personnel, and if they were lost, it would be a blow humanity could not recover from quickly. Others argued that this was a chance to make a statement, to show that humanity would not ignore the cries of allies. In the end, reason and instinct aligned. Humanity had always been a species that faced impossible odds and often won. The decision was made. Enforcers would be sent. Plans were drafted in record time. Ships were prepared, equipped with the latest technology, advanced weapons, and supplies to sustain the force for months. The enforcers themselves were briefed in a secure room far underground, their faces calm but their eyes sharp with focus. Lieutenant Mara Ellison, a veteran enforcer known for her strategic brilliance and ability to improvise under pressure, stood at the front. She addressed the team, her voice steady. "We are going into a war zone that no one else has managed to stop. The Coalition expects results. The civilians on Avorian are counting on us. And remember, our goal is not just to fight, but to protect. We win by thinking faster, moving smarter, and staying united. We are humans. We adapt. We endure. That is what makes us different. That is what makes us enforcers." Every simulation, every late-night exercise, every grueling mission had prepared them to answer a call like this. And now, that moment had come. The journey to Avorian was long. Humanity had mastered hyperspace travel, but even the fastest ships took days to cross the void between stars. During the trip, the enforcers studied intelligence reports, familiarizing themselves with Avorian's terrain, the enemy's known tactics, and the locations of civilian populations. Each day, Mara and her team discussed strategies, sharing ideas, anticipating challenges, and refining plans. Meanwhile, the rest of the galaxy watched with interest. Humans were not always welcomed as mediators or protectors. Many species had histories of conflict with Earth, or at least mutual suspicion. Yet the reputation of the enforcers was undeniable. News of their deployment spread quickly, and whispers circulated in alien fleets. The humans were coming. If there was any hope for Avorian, it rested on their shoulders. By the time the human ships exited hyperspace near Avorian, the scene was dire. Smoke rose from countless cities, and the skies were filled with marauder warships. Avorian's own fleet was scattered, damaged, and demoralized. The human enforcers moved with precision, coordinating with coalition leaders who were both awed and apprehensive. These humans were unlike any soldiers they had seen before. They were fast, clever, and willing to take risks that no other species would dare. The first action was simple but decisive. Mara and her team deployed reconnaissance drones to assess enemy positions, focusing on supply lines, weapon depots, and command centers. Within hours, they had gathered intelligence that would have taken conventional forces weeks to obtain. Using this information, they developed a plan. They would strike quickly, disrupt the marauders' supply chain, and protect the civilians. Their goal was not only to defend, but to turn the tide in favor of the coalition. Despite the urgency, Mara never allowed her team to act recklessly. Every move was calculated, every risk weighed. She emphasized adaptability, encouraging her soldiers to think for themselves. In human fashion, they improvised solutions on the fly, turning minor obstacles into advantages. A blocked canyon became a trap for enemy reinforcements. A malfunctioning drone was repurposed to deliver critical supplies. The coalition watched in amazement as humans transformed the battlefield not just with force, but with ingenuity. For the civilians of Avoran, hope arrived in the form of humans. Families huddled in shelters, unaware of the detailed plans being executed above them. Children looked up at the skies, catching glimpses of fast-moving ships and small strikes against marauder positions. For the first time in weeks, fear was tempered by a sense of possibility. Humanity had arrived, and they were not ordinary soldiers. They were enforcers, capable of turning despair into opportunity. Night fell on Avoran, but the work did not stop. Mara held a briefing for her commanders under the dim light of the warship's control room. Charts, holograms, and maps glowed before them, showing enemy positions, supply routes, and the paths of civilian evacuation. She spoke with calm authority, ensuring everyone understood their role and the importance of precision. "Tomorrow," she said, "we start the first strike. We will move fast, hit hard, and protect those who cannot fight. The enemy expects soldiers. They are about to face enforcers. Remember, we are humans, we adapt, we endure, that is why we succeed." Where others saw limits, humans saw possibilities. And as the first light of Avoran's sun broke over the horizon, casting golden rays over the scarred landscapes, Mara and her enforcers prepared for battle. The galaxy was watching, and the humans were ready. Their arrival marked the beginning of a story that would be remembered for generations, a story of courage, ingenuity, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. The call for soldiers had been answered, but what Avoran received was more than soldiers. They received enforcers. The first light of Avoran's day revealed a world battered but not broken. Smoke still rose from the outskirts of cities, and fires burned in scattered ruins, but the forests and oceans retained a sense of life that no enemy could fully destroy. From orbit, the human enforcers watched the planet with calm determination. Ships glided through the atmosphere, sending drones and small strike units to survey the terrain and locate areas of critical need. Mara Ellison stood on the bridge of the lead ship, her eyes scanning the holographic maps of cities, forests, and industrial zones. The complexity of the battlefield did not intimidate her. If anything, it sharpened her focus. The coalition leaders, alien officials with elongated limbs and shimmering eyes, had gathered aboard the same vessel. They were cautious but hopeful. They had seen humans in simulations, heard stories of past interventions, but this was the first time they would witness them firsthand. The enforcers moved with precision that inspired confidence. Every soldier had a task, every move carefully coordinated yet flexible enough to respond to sudden changes. Mara spoke to the coalition leader, a tall being named Ralthar, whose voice resonated like a deep chord. "We will protect your civilians first," Mara said. "We will secure key locations and disrupt the enemy's supply routes, but we cannot fight alone. Your fleets must support us, and your soldiers must follow our lead in certain operations. Adapt with us, not against us. That is how we succeed." The humans had no difficulty communicating, even with alien allies whose language and culture were unfamiliar. They relied on clear signals, gestures, and simple phrases, making complex strategies understandable to everyone. Their reputation as enforcers was not built on fear alone. It was built on clarity, intelligence, and efficiency. The first encounters with the marauder forces were unsettling. Scattered enemy patrols appeared, testing the humans' presence. Mara's team had anticipated these probes. They set up ambushes using the terrain to their advantage, channeling the enemy into narrow canyons or across open plains where humans could strike decisively. Small squads disabled enemy units with minimal force, focusing on strategy rather than brute destruction. The coalition soldiers observed in amazement as humans moved like coordinated pieces on a living board, adjusting tactics in real time as the battlefield changed. One of Mara's lieutenants, Jonah's Cruz, led a team into the industrial district of one city. Factories were half destroyed, smoke and fire filling the air, yet pockets of civilians remained trapped inside. Jonas and his team moved quickly, guiding people to safety while simultaneously disabling marauder mines and weapon caches. The humans' ability to multitask, to protect and fight at the same time, astonished the coalition forces. While aliens often focused on one task at a time, humans seemed capable of thinking in several directions at once. By midday, reports began streaming in from other sectors of the planet. Enforcers had secured key bridges, preventing enemy reinforcements from reaching the cities. Supply convoys, vital for marauder operations, were disrupted before they could even leave enemy-controlled areas. Mara received a message from her communications officer, a young enforcer named Lee Kim. "Command, our drones have identified a large enemy forward base in the northern plains. It appears heavily guarded, but there are civilians nearby. We could neutralize it quickly if we coordinate with local forces. Use minimal force near civilians. Remember precision and speed over destruction. We want them disabled, not eradicated. Keep civilians safe at all costs." They even managed to capture key marauder officers for interrogation, information that would be vital for planning the next stages of the conflict. For the coalition, it was a revelation. They had fought many wars, yet they had never seen a species capable of such speed, intelligence, and adaptability on the battlefield. As the day progressed, the marauders realized they were facing something unfamiliar. Their patrols were ambushed in ways they had not predicted. Supply lines were cut, and their forward base in the north was compromised. Panic began to spread among the enemy ranks, and morale faltered. Mara watched the battlefield unfold on the holographic display, noting patterns and predicting enemy reactions. "Human adaptability is remarkable," Ralthar said beside her, voice filled with a mix of awe and disbelief. "They do not fight as we expected. They do not retreat as we would. They think differently." The first day's success had been encouraging, but the true challenge was only beginning. The marauders were cunning and resourceful. They would regroup, counterattack, and exploit any weakness they could find. Mara knew the humans had to stay ahead, anticipate enemy moves, and keep civilians safe while turning the tide of war. That night, the enforcers gathered in temporary command centers across the planet. Humans and coalition officers met together, discussing strategies, sharing information, and planning for the next day. Mara addressed a joint briefing, her tone firm but calm. "Today we protected civilians, disrupted enemy operations, and secured key locations. Tomorrow we move further. We will extend our control, cut off their reinforcements, and show the marauders that Avoran is not theirs to take. Every action must be precise, every decision careful. The enemy may try to adapt to us, but we will always adapt faster. That is what makes humans enforcers." Over time, they began to emulate human tactics, learning to think in ways they had never considered. It was not arrogance or pride that allowed humans to succeed. It was creativity, unity, and a relentless focus on the mission. Meanwhile, civilians began to see the difference humans made. Families emerged from hiding places, looking toward the horizon where human strike units operated. Children, once terrified by the sounds of war, began to hope. Villagers and city dwellers saw humans coordinating evacuations, building temporary shelters, and even offering simple words of comfort. The enforcers were not distant heroes. They were active protectors, blending courage with compassion. As the sun rose on the second day, Mara's team prepared for a larger operation. Intelligence had confirmed that a major marauder fleet was approaching from the outer orbit. They intended to break the human-led defenses and retake lost ground. Mara knew that confrontation was inevitable. She gathered her lieutenants, pointing to maps that showed both enemy positions and civilian safe zones. "We will hold the cities and engage the incoming fleet strategically," she explained. "Our goal is to prevent destruction, protect civilians, and force the enemy into positions where we control the engagement. Remember, we act quickly, decisively, and with precision. The enemy expects soldiers. They will find enforcers." They deployed their fleets in support, trusted human judgment in ground operations, and began to see the value of improvisation combined with disciplined planning. The bond between humans and coalition forces strengthened with each passing hour, united by a shared goal: survival and victory. Even as they prepared, Mara and her lieutenants remained aware that victory was not guaranteed. The marauders were cunning, and Avorian's terrain, while beautiful, offered many opportunities for ambushes and traps. Yet the humans did not hesitate. They had trained for situations like this, where stakes were high, the odds were against them, and creativity was the greatest weapon. By the end of the second day, the humans had achieved significant gains. They had secured several key districts, protected thousands of civilians, and disrupted marauder operations enough to force the enemy into retreat. Reports came in from various sectors of the planet, painting a picture of coordinated efficiency that no other species could match. Mara stood on the observation deck of her ship, looking at the horizon where human and coalition units moved together. The sky was still tinged with smoke, but hope had returned to the planet. The enforcers had proven that humans were not just soldiers, they were a force that could change the outcome of wars. Tomorrow, she thought, we will face the marauders directly, but we are ready, we are humans, we adapt, we endure. And Avorian will survive. The galaxy, watching from afar, began to recognize the truth that had been whispered for decades. When humans acted, they acted not just as fighters, but as enforcers, capable of shaping the fate of worlds. The day began quietly, but everyone knew that calm rarely lasted long on Avorian. From orbit, Mara Ellison could see the distant glint of enemy ships advancing through space, a reminder that the marauders were not finished. They had retreated temporarily, regrouping and planning a counterattack. Mara knew that this day would be different. The humans had prepared, but the enemy would test them with numbers, firepower, and unpredictable strategies. There was no room for error. The enforcers moved swiftly, coordinating with the coalition forces to set up defensive positions in key cities and along major supply routes. They were not simply waiting for the enemy. They were preparing to shape the battlefield to their advantage. Mara walked among her teams, observing, advising, and encouraging. Every human knew their role, but they were also trained to think on their feet. Adaptability was what made them enforcers, and today that skill would be tested more than ever. Jonah's crews led a squad through one of the northern districts, moving quietly among damaged buildings. Civilians had been evacuated, leaving the streets open for tactical maneuvers. The squad placed surveillance devices at strategic points, watching for marauder scouts. The humans worked efficiently, combining speed with intelligence. They were not just soldiers, they were problem solvers, adjusting their tactics as they discovered obstacles or opportunities. The first contact came just before midday. A small enemy unit had slipped past coalition patrols, attempting to sabotage a key communications hub. Mara's team intercepted them with precision. Instead of rushing into a chaotic fight, the humans created a controlled trap. Using the city's ruined buildings as cover, they channeled the enemy into a narrow corridor. The marauders had no room to maneuver, and the humans disabled their weapons quickly. Civilians were safe, and the enemy was neutralized without unnecessary destruction. Watching from the command center, Ralthar could not hide his amazement. "They are not just strong," he said to Mara. "They think. They adapt to every situation. Other species would have made mistakes, but your people, they find solutions we could not have imagined." Reports from the northern plains indicated that the marauder fleet was forming, preparing to strike both in space and on the ground. Mara gathered her lieutenants for a briefing. "Our goal today is simple," she said. "We must hold the cities, protect civilians, and force the enemy into positions where we have control. We will divide their forces, hit key targets, and use every advantage we have. Remember, speed and coordination are more important than sheer firepower. Adapt to the unexpected, protect those who cannot fight, and stay united. We are humans. We adapt. We endure. That is why we succeed." They would need to trust human judgment completely, moving in ways they had not before, combining their strength with human strategy. As the enemy approached, Mara deployed small strike teams to critical points. One team, led by Lieutenant Ashav Verma, positioned near the industrial district, where marauders had previously attempted to capture civilians. Another team secured bridges and roads to prevent enemy reinforcements. Drones flew overhead, monitoring enemy movements and sending real-time data back to the command center. The marauders struck first in the open plains outside the main cities. They sent waves of troops and vehicles, attempting to draw human forces out into the open. But Mara had anticipated this. The humans did not rush to meet the enemy. They used the terrain to their advantage. Hills, valleys, and ruined buildings became traps. Mara's teams moved quickly, disabling vehicles, cutting supply lines, and forcing enemy units into positions where they could be controlled. On the ground, Jonah's crew's squad encountered a larger group of marauders than expected. Instead of panicking, they assessed the situation and created a clever diversion. Using small drones and controlled explosions, they lured the enemy into a narrow canyon where coalition artillery waited. The result was a swift and efficient victory. The coalition soldiers marveled at the humans' ability to turn chaos into opportunity. Meanwhile, Mara coordinated the defense from the command ship, directing units across the planet. She anticipated enemy movements, using intelligence gathered from drones and captured officers. When one marauder unit tried to flank a city, she redirected human squads to intercept, cutting the enemy off before they could cause harm. The humans acted like conductors of a massive orchestra, each unit moving in harmony to achieve maximum effect. By mid-afternoon, the battle reached the cities. Mara's teams had already secured the streets and evacuated civilians, but the marauders had reinforcements hidden among ruined buildings. The humans did not hesitate. Using precision strikes and coordinated maneuvers, they cleared enemy positions with minimal risk to civilians. Coalition forces followed their lead, learning to think in new ways, combining brute strength with human ingenuity. One particularly tense moment came when a marauder commander tried to use a hidden vehicle to break through a barricade protecting civilians. Jonas and his team acted instantly. They disabled the vehicle, trapped the commander, and secured the area all within minutes. The operation was clean, efficient, and effective, demonstrating the humans' ability to act decisively under pressure. By late afternoon, the tide of battle had turned. Marauder forces were retreating, their plans disrupted, their morale shaken. Humans and coalition soldiers had secured key districts, protected thousands of civilians, and forced the enemy into positions where they could no longer operate effectively. The enforcers had not only defended Avoran, they had reshaped the battlefield entirely. Mara walked among her squads as they regrouped, checking on their status and offering words of encouragement. Despite the intensity of the day, the humans remained calm, focused, and ready for the next challenge. Their adaptability, unity, and strategic thinking had carried them through a situation that would have overwhelmed other species. The coalition leaders gathered to discuss the results. Ralthar spoke with a mix of pride and disbelief. "We have fought many wars," he said, "but we have never seen a species that can act like this. Humans are not just soldiers, they are enforcers. They think, adapt, and protect. They have changed the course of this battle." The humans had to stay ahead, anticipate every move, and continue protecting civilians. Success required vigilance, creativity, and courage. As night fell on Avoran, the enforcers did not rest. They secured positions, repaired equipment, and prepared for the next wave of enemy attacks. Mara held a briefing, reviewing data and coordinating with coalition officers. "Today we proved that humans can change the tide of battle," she said. "Tomorrow we will face new challenges. We must stay focused, adapt to the unexpected, and continue protecting civilians. Remember, we are humans. We adapt, we endure, and we will ensure Avoran survives." Families who had hidden in fear now saw soldiers moving with purpose, protecting them and driving the enemy back. Children watched in awe as enforcers coordinated strikes, evacuated families, and restored order. Mara's teams offered simple words of encouragement, smiles, and reassurance, blending courage with compassion. Even the coalition soldiers, who had been skeptical at first, now worked seamlessly with humans. They copied human tactics, learned to anticipate enemy movements, and embraced adaptability over rigid routines. Trust had been earned through action, and the bond between humans and their allies strengthened with every passing hour. By the end of the day, Avoran was safe, for now. The marauders had been repelled, but they had not been destroyed. Mara knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, larger battles, and more complex strategies. Yet she also knew that humans had proven something important. When faced with impossible odds, they could adapt, endure, and achieve what others thought impossible. Standing on the observation deck, Mara looked at the horizon where fires still burned and smoke rose from the distant plains. The humans had made a difference. The enforcers had arrived, and their presence had shifted the balance of the battle. Civilians were safe, key positions were secured, and coalition forces were stronger for having worked with them. "The enemy expects soldiers," Mara thought quietly, "but they will find enforcers. They will learn that humans are not predictable. We adapt, we endure, and we do not fail." The enforcers had shown that even against a relentless enemy, humanity's courage, intelligence, and unity could turn despair into victory. And the legend of the human enforcers grew, spreading across Avorion and beyond, a reminder that when humans acted, they acted decisively, cleverly, and with a heart determined to protect life itself. The night was long, but for the first time in weeks, the people of Avorion slept with a sense of hope. Humans were here, and their presence had changed everything. The morning sun rose over Avorion like a promise, casting long shadows across ruined streets and scorched plains. Humans and coalition forces prepared for the battle they knew was coming. The Marauders had regrouped overnight, sending reinforcements and larger fleets to strike back with full force. Mara Ellison studied the battlefield from the command ship, her eyes scanning the holographic display that showed enemy positions, civilian zones, and coalition units. She could see the enemy's plan taking shape even before they acted. Humans had trained for this, not just in drills or simulations, but in real combat situations where thinking ahead could save lives. Mara addressed her lieutenants with calm authority. "This is what we expected. The enemy will try to overwhelm us with numbers and power. Do not panic. We will divide their forces, protect civilians, and use their aggression against them. Every unit must know their role, but remember to think for yourself. Adapt and endure. That is how humans win." They began moving fleets and ground units according to Mara's strategy, trusting human judgment completely. It was unusual for an alien species to accept guidance so fully, but humans had earned it through action. The first strike came in the early hours. Marauder warships emerged from hidden space corridors, targeting strategic points near civilian cities and industrial areas. Humans and coalition forces responded instantly. Strike teams were already in position, drones patrolling the skies, and defense systems calibrated for maximum efficiency. Mara's enforcers moved like a single organism, each unit acting in coordination yet capable of independent decision-making. Jonah's crews led a squad on the ground, advancing through the industrial district to intercept enemy vehicles. Civilians had been evacuated, but the streets were still dangerous, littered with debris and remnants of previous battles. The Marauders attempted to use heavy vehicles to break through barricades, but Jonah's team anticipated their approach. Using careful positioning and precision tools, they disabled vehicles and forced enemy units into narrow corridors where they could be neutralized with minimal risk. Coalition soldiers followed their lead, learning to move and think like humans. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Ashav Verma's squad was tasked with securing the Eastern Bridge, a critical route for enemy reinforcements. Using fast-moving drones and rapid maneuvers, her team created a defensive network that funneled the Marauders into traps. Small explosions disabled enemy vehicles, while communication intercepts allowed the humans to predict the next wave. Within minutes, the bridge was secure, and coalition reinforcements could advance safely. The battle escalated quickly. Mara's teams faced waves of enemy troops, but they did not falter. Humans excelled in improvisation, using terrain, technology, and timing to turn each attack into an opportunity. When one squad faced unexpected reinforcements, they created a distraction, allowing another team to strike the enemy's command post. Civilians remained safe, and coalition forces learned the value of thinking creatively under pressure. From orbit, Mara coordinated larger fleet movements. Coalition ships engaged enemy warships, while human strike teams focused on precision strikes against key targets. Marauder officers who had anticipated chaos found themselves outmaneuvered. The humans acted faster, adapted to new situations, and combined offense with defense in ways no other species had managed. Mara observed the battlefield and made quick adjustments, sending units where they were most needed, anticipating enemy reactions, and protecting vulnerable areas. The turning point came when a large Marauder assault targeted the central city. Hundreds of enemy troops and vehicles attempted to overwhelm defenses. Mara's enforcers were ready. Using a combination of drones, barricades, and coordinated squads, they funneled the enemy into a confined area. Coalition artillery provided support from above, while humans moved on the ground to neutralize threats. Every strike was deliberate, every action calculated. Within hours, the enemy assault had failed. The Marauders were forced to retreat, and civilian areas remained intact. Even as the battle continued, Mara made sure to protect her own team. She rotated squads, ensured communication lines were secure, and checked on injured coalition soldiers. The humans were not just fighters. They were leaders, teachers, and protectors. Their focus was not on glory or conquest, but on survival and the safety of those who could not fight. By afternoon, the battlefield was a controlled chaos. Marauder forces were scattered, their reinforcements blocked, and morale began to falter. Coalition soldiers, inspired by human leadership, moved with confidence. They had learned to anticipate enemy moves, improvise when necessary, and trust in the humans' judgment. Mara observed the results with a sense of satisfaction, knowing that the humans had reshaped the fight entirely. A critical moment came when a Marauder commander attempted to launch a surprise attack on a civilian evacuation route. Mara anticipated it through intelligence gathered from drones and captured officers. She dispatched Jonah's squad along a hidden path to intercept the enemy while sending a Shaz team to secure the civilians. The plan worked perfectly. The enemy was trapped, civilians remained safe, and coalition forces were able to eliminate the threat efficiently. As evening approached, the final stage of the battle began. Marauder fleets attempted to regroup for one last major assault, targeting both ground and orbital positions. The humans anticipated their strategy, setting up coordinated traps and defensive lines. Coalition ships engaged in space combat while human strike teams carried out precision attacks on key targets. Marauder morale collapsed as they realized they could not match the humans' adaptability and coordination. Mara stood on the observation deck of the command ship, watching the enemy retreat. The humans had not only defended Avoran, they had turned the tide of the war. The cities were safe, civilians protected, and coalition forces stronger than ever. Mara's team had demonstrated that humans were more than soldiers. They were enforcers, capable of reshaping battles and inspiring allies. The coalition leaders gathered to discuss the outcome. Ralthar spoke with awe in his voice. "We have fought many wars, but we have never seen a species act like this. Humans do not just fight, they think, adapt, and protect. They have changed the course of this battle." They secured positions, repaired equipment, and prepared for any remaining threats. Mara gathered her lieutenants for a final briefing. "Today we faced the enemy at their strongest," she said. "We defended civilians, protected key locations, and forced the Marauders to retreat. Tomorrow we will consolidate our gains, secure the planet, and prepare for any counterattacks. Remember, we are humans. We adapt, we endure, and we will ensure Avoran survives." Mara's teams offered words of reassurance, smiles, and guidance, blending strength with care. The coalition soldiers, who had once been skeptical, now worked seamlessly alongside humans. They copied tactics, learned to anticipate enemy movements, and embraced flexibility over rigid routines. Trust had been earned, and the bond between humans and their allies had grown stronger with each passing hour. By the end of the day, Avoran was secure. Marauder forces had been repelled, key positions reinforced, and civilians protected. The humans had proven that they were more than soldiers. They were enforcers, capable of inspiring allies, protecting life, and changing the outcome of wars. Mara looked at the horizon, where fires still burned in the distance, but hope had returned. Humans had made a difference. Their presence had shifted the balance, and the people of Avoran could begin to rebuild. Mara thought quietly to herself, "The enemy expected soldiers, but they found enforcers. They will learn that humans are unpredictable. We adapt. We endure. And we do not fail." The legend of the human enforcers spread across the planet, a symbol of hope, strength, and the power of adaptation. The night was long, but for the first time in weeks, the people of Avoran could rest without fear. Humans were here, and their presence had changed everything. Mara's enforcers had shown that even against overwhelming odds, humanity could adapt, endure, and achieve what others thought impossible. The galaxy, watching from afar, would remember this day. Humans were not just participants in battle. They were leaders, protectors, and the ultimate wildcard in the fight for survival. Avoran would survive because of them, and the story of their courage would echo across the stars for generations to come. The morning air on Avoran carried a strange calm, almost as if the planet itself was taking a deep breath after days of fear and fire. Mara Ellison stood on the observation deck of the command ship, looking at the horizon. Fires still smoldered in the distance, but the cities, forests, and oceans were no longer under immediate threat. For the first time since the humans had arrived, there was a sense that survival was not just possible, it was assured. Mara knew that today would mark the final phase of the battle. The Marauder forces had retreated into scattered positions, demoralized and disorganized after repeated defeats. Their fleets were broken, their supply lines cut, and their commanders captured or neutralized. Yet she did not underestimate them. Even a cornered enemy could strike unexpectedly. Preparation, intelligence, and adaptability would still decide the day. Coalition leaders gathered aboard the command ship for a final briefing. Ralthar, his voice filled with both relief and respect, spoke first. "The humans have done what we thought impossible. Our fleets, our soldiers, even our intelligence could not have achieved this. Yet they came and they adapted and they endured. Their presence has saved our world. Our goal is total control of the battlefield without unnecessary risk to life. Precision and unity will win this war, not recklessness." Civilians were moved to safe areas, guided by human teams who had proven themselves trustworthy and capable. Every movement was calculated, every step designed to minimize harm while maximizing efficiency. Humans had transformed the battlefield into a controlled system, a place where adaptation and intelligence were as important as strength. In one sector, Jonah's crews and his squad approached the last enemy stronghold in the northern plains. The marauders had fortified a small compound, thinking it could serve as a final resistance point. Jonas and his team moved silently, using ruined terrain to mask their approach. Instead of charging in, they observed patterns of enemy patrols, looking for weaknesses. Ashav Verma's squad coordinated from the flanks, ready to block any escape route. When the time came, the humans acted with precision. Using small drones to create distractions, Jonah's team disabled defensive systems and cut off communication lines. Coalition artillery provided cover, but it was the human approach, calculated, adaptive, and synchronized, that ensured the enemy could not regroup. Within minutes, the stronghold was neutralized. Marauder forces surrendered or fled, unable to match the humans' efficiency. Civilians in nearby areas remained untouched, and the coalition forces marveled at the humans' ability to protect life while achieving total battlefield control. Meanwhile, Mara coordinated orbital operations to prevent any marauder ships from escaping. Her team had predicted potential escape routes, and human strike crafts blocked them before the enemy could reach hyperspace corridors. Fleet commanders followed her instructions with careful precision, allowing no enemy ship to slip away. The result was complete domination of both ground and orbital theaters. The final confrontation came in the Western Plains, where a marauder commander had rallied the last of his forces for a desperate stand. Mara anticipated this and set up a controlled engagement. Human squads moved swiftly to flank enemy positions, while coalition units provided support from the rear. Civilians had been evacuated, and the humans focused entirely on neutralizing enemy forces efficiently. As the battle unfolded, coalition soldiers witnessed once again what set humans apart. They did not panic, they did not hesitate, and they did not act recklessly. Every squad made decisions independently yet in perfect harmony with the larger plan. Enemy movements were countered before they could fully act, and every threat was neutralized with precision. The marauder commander, seeing his forces collapse, attempted to surrender, and the humans accepted it without hesitation. No unnecessary violence, no chaos, only controlled and intelligent action. By midday, the last pockets of resistance were gone. Avoran was free. Fires still burned in the distance, but the cities and civilians were safe. Coalition forces gathered to celebrate, their relief palpable. Ralthar approached Mara, his expression filled with awe. "Your people have done what no one else could. You did not just fight, you led, protected, and inspired. Avoran owes its life to the humans. That is what makes us enforcers." The humans' focus on protecting life, even while fighting a relentless enemy, had won the respect and trust of the alien population. Children who had hidden in fear for days now walked alongside human squads, curious and smiling. Families began to rebuild their homes, guided by humans who moved among them with reassurance and calm. Humans were not distant heroes. They were part of the recovery, teaching the coalition and civilians how to think strategically, act decisively, and protect life while facing challenges. As evening approached, Mara convened her lieutenants one final time. "Today, we have ensured Avoran's survival. The marauders are defeated and civilians are safe. But our work is not just over because the fighting has ended. We must leave a legacy, teach what we have learned, and ensure that this planet can defend itself in the future. That is how we honor those who trusted us. Your actions today will be remembered for generations." As night fell over Avoran, the skies were filled with stars, and the sense of calm was profound. Mara walked among her enforcers, observing their tired but satisfied faces. They had fought, adapted, and endured. The humans had proven once again that their strength was not only in physical skill but in intelligence, unity, and compassion. The people of Avoran celebrated in small ways. Families reunited, children laughed, and survivors began to rebuild homes. Humans moved among them not as conquerors but as protectors. Coalition forces had learned to trust and emulate them. Across the planet, hope had returned. The humans had not only won a battle, they had restored faith in the possibility of survival and resilience. Mara reflected quietly on the journey. The call for soldiers had been answered, but Avoran had received more than soldiers. They had received enforcers, humans capable of adapting to any situation, enduring the impossible and protecting life with intelligence and courage. The reputation of humans as unpredictable and exceptional warriors had been reinforced, but more importantly, their legacy as protectors and leaders was cemented. The next morning, Mara and her enforcers prepared to leave Avoran. Coalition leaders and civilians gathered to express their gratitude. Ralthar stepped forward, his voice filled with emotion. Humans have given us hope. You came when no one else would. You protected us when we had no strength. You are enforcers, and the galaxy will remember this day because of you. Mara watched Avoran shrink in the distance, a planet saved, a people inspired, and a galaxy reminded of humanity's unique strength. The humans had proven that when they acted with intelligence, courage, and a sense of responsibility that no other species could match. As the enforcers traveled home, the legend of their mission began to spread across the stars. Stories would be told of humans arriving when all hope seemed lost, of their precision, adaptability, and courage, and of how they protected life even while defeating a ruthless enemy. The people of Avoran would remember, the coalition would remember, and the galaxy would take note. When humans intervene, they are more than soldiers. They are enforcers, capable of shaping history and preserving life. Mara reflected quietly as the stars stretched across the black void of space. The mission was complete, the enemy defeated, and the people of Avoran safe. But more than that, humanity had shown what it could do when called upon. Adaptability, unity, intelligence, and courage had triumphed over chaos, and the legend of the human enforcers was secured for generations to come. The galaxy had asked for soldiers, and Earth had sent enforcers. The difference had been clear. Humanity had arrived, acted decisively, and proven that when they protect life, nothing, not numbers, power, or fear, could stand in their way. Avoran would flourish, coalition forces would learn, and humans would return to their home knowing they had made a difference. The stars shone silently as the enforcers traveled home, their mission complete, their legacy eternal. Mara Ellison stood at the observation deck one last time, thinking of the people they had saved, the battles fought, and the lessons learned. Humanity had adapted. Humanity had endured. Humanity had prevailed, and the galaxy would never forget it.